for those of you who may or may not know me from opening session and some of the other workshops, my name is Andrew Dimmer. I'm the Director of Procurement and the Director of Internal Development here at GrizzHacks, and today we're going to be having a discussion about submission. So as you know, we are about 12 hours out from the initial deadline, which is the end of hacking and the deadline for the initial dev post submission. So first and foremost, I want to go over why we have two deadlines. So the first deadline is literally just to go make sure that we have teams in there so we can start allocating judges. At the 8:30 deadline, all that we need from you is the name of your project, a tagline, enough of the write-up to, go through and pass it through DevPost. So even one sentence is fine. We were inspired to build the hack to go solve, X or whatever it is. Just enough to go submit the write-up, and then you hit the next page, you tell us which prize categories you're going for, you add your teammates, and that is good. Now, the reason we have that at 8:30 is because it gives us as organizers time to go through and run around on the back end and go basically start double checking and assigning out judging so that we make sure that everyone's project gets judged. Now, there's always, confusion around submission time. Things happen, totally fine. But what this allows us to basically do is by having that 8:30 deadline, we can go let everyone know, hey, here's the roster of all of the projects and what they're being judged for. So if your project isn't in all the categories you think it should be, or your project isn't showing up on the roster or something like that, it gives us time to go fix that before we actually have distributed judging information out to our judges. That said, the 8:30 deadline, we're not actually starting any judging then. We don't start judging until 10 o'clock, which is officially the deadline for the write-up, the video, and the code repository. So let's go over a little bit about basically eligibility first and foremost, because this is important for everyone. We went over this at opening session, but just in case anyone needs a refresher, any middle school, high school, college, university student is eligible to participate in teams of up to 4 hackers. And if you've graduated within the past year, you're also welcome to participate. If you have people on your team that are not eligible, the whole team isn't eligible for that one. So just a heads up there. We had someone ask that earlier in the day. So your whole team needs to be eligible for prizes because it's not fair to everyone else if we have someone who's been in the industry for 20 years and builds your project and everyone else just gets the prize. The other thing is that with an online event, there are two relatively unique requirements that we have. First and foremost, the entire project and demo must be built entirely within the hacking time. So starting 24 hours ago up through, 12 and a half-ish hours from now. That said, you're still welcome to use things like open source frameworks. If you have any like instruction manuals, you're welcome to go, search stuff around online if you need, help from Stack Overflow or something like that. All of that's totally fine, but we want you building the project actually at GrizzHacks. A continuation hack is something you've already started, unfortunately isn't allowed just because it's very difficult for us to go judge, your project if you've only added new features, because usually there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes to go, support all of that. The other thing is that these projects can only be submitted to GrizzHacks itself. So I know that there's other hackathons going on this weekend, and because it's virtual, you can submit to more than one, but GrizzHacks is the last submission deadline of the weekend, and because of that, it's not fair to hackers who are submitting to other hackathons and GrizzHacks that they've got more hacking time. So just for simplicity, if you're submitting to GrizzHacks, to be eligible for prizes, it has to be submitted just to GrizzHacks. Now, that being said, does anyone have any questions about eligibility? For the most part, it should be pretty straightforward. But if anyone has any questions, obviously feel free to unmute or ask it in the chat. Just a reminder for those people who are coming on new, this session will be recorded in terms of the part that I'm sharing. The Google Meeting part won't be, though. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to put it in the chat. You're welcome to unmute. But if you don't feel comfortable unmuting, chat's fine too. Okay, doesn't look like we have any eligibility questions. So let's go into the submission requirements. Now, for those of you who are familiar with GrizzHacks 4, some eligibility requirements are going to look new to you. In fact, all of these will look pretty new to you. Previously, the requirements for submission was you submitted a dev post and you showed up at your table when it was time for us to go do judging. This year, obviously, we are not having judges coming around to tables. So we're basing our entire thing off of a video demo your public code repository, and the write-up. And we have prizes actually for the best of each one of these categories. So that's pretty cool as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is the 2-minute video demo. So this is your chance to go show off what you've built. Don't get me wrong. Explaining, what your hack is, why it's important, who would use it, overall purpose, what you built it with, everything like that. That's important for the context for the judges. But the main part of your demo should be a demo of what you built. So one of the big things that I want to go highlight for people is that we're not looking for a PowerPoint of the idea. You could have the best idea in the world, but if you didn't really build a whole lot of it, it's not necessarily going to compare a whole lot to other projects. On the flip side, though, you can have a pretty simple idea that's really well executed that if you show off in the demo, it could do really well. So this is a kind of our way of balancing, beginners and experienced hackers out a little bit so that everyone's got pretty equal chances. So focus on, what it does, how it actually works, and walk us through your project, not just the idea. If you don't know how to record a demo video, obviously it depends on which platform you're on, but the one that I recommend, and I believe this is both Windows, Linux, and Mac, correct me if I'm wrong, but OBS is called Open Broadcast System. It's a great open source video recorder. In fact, it's what I'm using to go make a recording of this. And so it's really easy to use. And on the dev post, we have a video instructional tutorial that I filmed for some professors at Oakland University that you can use showing how to set it up, how to start a recording, everything else like that. So in terms of demoing your project there, highly recommended. What happens if you've got a hardware hack or an app that obviously you're not going to be doing as a screen recording? That's totally fine. If it's an app, we still recommend trying a screen recorder. There are different apps that can do screen recording. But if it's a hardware hack, obviously film it to the best of your ability. If you've got a tripod or things like that, obviously the better quality of your video, the better. But we aren't judging you on the quality of your video, like the technical production value. We care more about what your hack is. So just make sure it's clear enough for the judges and you should be good. If you've never made a hackathon demo video before, I linked 3 different kind of styles of hackathon video demos that I've made that are all within the 2-minute time frame to the dev post that you're welcome to go check out. So that is a reference for you. There's no right way to do it, I can say, and it really depends on your project, on how you approach it. But those are some things you can use as an example if you really don't have a clue how you want to demo it, that you can use as a starting point. Does anyone have any question about the video before I go on to the next part? Okay, demo video. Does everyone from the team need to present? Not in the demo video. Now, what I will say is that because hackathons, time crunch, eek, scary, deadline, more than likely, you might be better off having different parts of the people do different parts of the demo. So if you have one person who does the introduction, one person do the conclusion, and one person, or 2 people, depending on exactly what you're showing, actually film parts of the demo, you can be filming everything concurrently and just have one person string it together. That said, it's totally fine if there's just one person on the video demo. I know that internet connections, physically sending files back and forth, it's sometimes more work than it's worth for a 2-minute video. So if one person just wants to do the demo, that is also totally fine. When we get to top 10 judging, not everyone needs to be there on the video, but we highly recommend it because there will be Q&A, and you don't want to be asked something that, oh, teammate, B did this part of the app, but I don't know how it works, so I can't answer the question. So does that make sense for the video demo? And we'll get to top 10 judging a little bit later. Awesome. Anyone else have any other questions about the video? Okay. So the next thing you need to submit is a link to a public code repository. So for those of you who were at my Introduction to GitHub workshop earlier, you kind of already know the gist of this one. For those of you that weren't, basically the moral of the story is we need a GitHub link with your code attached, or a Bitbucket link or things like that. We recommend GitHub. It's generally been the easiest we found to use and teach for someone who's just getting started, but there is more than one Git repository software out there, so we just basically need to be able to see your code. The big reason we do this is because different hacks have different parts that are important to them. And sometimes it may be, look, it's a button on the front end. And and the judges will go through and look at it and say, oh, it's a button. But if you actually go through and kind of look at the code, oh, well, you've got this really cool algorithm that makes it more efficient. And we want to be able to account for that in judging. In terms of like quality of the code, it's a hackathon project. Don't worry about that. Anyone who sees it, just say, I created it for this hackathon. Quality of code doesn't really matter. But we do need to show that you have done some coding and what you've worked on for that one. With that in mind, the other thing too is please make sure that your repo is public. If we can't see it, it doesn't help us. So if you've already created a private repo in GitHub, I know you can make that public. If you need any help with that one, it's in settings, but if you need any help, reach out to one of the mentors or ask organizers, and we're all happy to help you with that. The other thing that I did want to go mention is we do have the best DevOps prize for the team that, uses the GitHub the best in terms of actually managing their code as a team thing. So if you haven't already, done that really, you still have 12 hours left if you want to work on, pull requests and tags and, assigning people to tasks and things like that towards that prize. Anyone have any questions about a public code repository? Okay.
Oh, I had a question.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
How filled out does our README have to be? Like, is that necessary or?
Doesn't matter. The part that we actually care about in terms of the code repository is the code. That's a really good point, actually. Everything that we need for actually scoring the submission comes from the dev post write-up. So you're welcome to go cross-post what you post on your dev post to the README. That's totally fine. Although one thing that I found is sometimes what you have in the README is different from what you have in the dev post, because the dev post is more about, this is my project and challenges and what I learned and things like that. Whereas typically a README is this is how you run it and what it does, and if you're installing it, what do you do? So there's kind of two different audiences. You're welcome to cross post, but we only really care about the dev post write up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Speaking of that, that leads us to the next part. We need a complete dev post write up. So, if any of you have tried doing a hackathon demo before, you'll know that 2 minutes is not enough time to go share everything about your hack. But anything that you can't include in the demo video, you can put in the write-up. So if you have, this is why we built this project this way, and this is why we chose our tech stack, and these are the challenges we had. And I know there was one project that I went through, and I'm like, well, I had this issue, in terms of how the JavaScript DOM works. So I worked around this way, and this is the setup and configuration and things like that. None of that fits in the video. It's just not going to happen. You can try, but speaking from experience, when you go to edit it, you go, gee, I have an 8-minute video I need to fit down into 2. All that tends to get cut. But we still like that for judging because having a project that you've worked through some challenges for and things like that, and that explains why it's not working type thing, will definitely help you kind of boost you up in the rankings. So we also have the write-up for the best write-up, but moral of the story here is DevPost automatically generates headings. We highly recommend you use those for the project. If there's other stuff you want to include, obviously feel free to add your own headings, but generally the DevPost headings are a pretty good, prerequisite bar for what you should be meeting. Does anyone have any questions about the write-up? Okay, doesn't look like we have any questions. And then the last thing to submit is optional, and this is a demo link. And the reason this is optional is because we know that not every project has a linkable demo. If you're running servers and you don't have cloud hosting set up, because let's say you're not in a region that supports the Google Cloud Platform credit, or you have a hardware hack, or you've got a mobile app and you don't have the paid Apple developer license to actually release it, we totally get that not every demo can have and not every hack can have a public demo. That said, highly recommend that if you can, so for something like a website or a game, you do get a public demo up there, even if it's not necessarily just for our judges. It is cool if you have your judges and they've got, oh, how does this thing work? Oh, I can try it myself. Don't get me wrong, totally helps sometimes, but most of the time, this is more of a thing for you because I know that there's a lot of recruiters that look at DevPost and GitHub. And it's one thing to say, here's code that I built at a hackathon, and here's a video of what it does, and it's another thing entirely to go say, hi, so and so, I'm so confident that in what I built that you can try it out. And obviously they know it's built in 24 hours. They're not expecting, the next Facebook or anything like that. But it's really cool having that. And there's all kinds of free ways to go host, especially things like websites and games. So if you have something that can be hosted, we highly recommend you kind of take a look at doing that. And our organizers and mentors are happy to help you with that if that is something you'd like. And obviously, in terms of hosting too, that's something that you can even set up after hacking ends before the dev post is due. So you don't need to worry about that cutting into hacking time if that's what you're concerned about. So with that said, anyone have any questions about a demo link? Okay. Oh, in the video, do we need to talk about the reason why we made our project? Kind of. The thing that I'll say for the video is one of the things we do look for is that the project actually solves a problem, and I'm going to go over kind of the judging criteria now. Um, I wouldn't go into a whole lot of detail about it because 2 minutes, time lane, time frame, kind of hard to fit all the time. But thing, if you can kind of do a brief summary, that tends to help give the judges some context. So I normally do the rule of thumb of if it's a 2 minute demo video, maybe a 20-second-ish problem. I built a solution, and then go through and minute and a half demo, and then like a 10-second, thanks for watching. You know, here's our little one single sentence closing statement type thing. And yeah, like I said, if there are things that work on local servers, obviously demo link isn't required. But if you've got things like if you're building an HTML website maybe and you don't have a local server, that is something we can stand up hosting for in literally like 5 minutes type thing using GitHub pages. So that's the kind of thing that you could do for a demo link. So with that in mind, I'm going to go quickly skim through that kind of the judging criteria that we're using for this. So the first is kind of technical integrity. We value quality over quantity. So just saying, we're piling in all kinds of different tech stacks, if it's not implemented well, it doesn't really help you. But if you start small and you do something really, really well, obviously that's really valuable. So the big thing we're looking for is that everything that you're implementing has a purpose. Um, the next thing is the flash factor. So we came up with this one because there's a lot of hackathons that are like, oh, it's a blockchain or a machine learning hackathon, and we use, this to go do X, Y, and Z. And, just having the buzzwords doesn't always mean that you've implemented it. And so the big thing here is, if you actually use machine learning or you actually use blockchain and there's a reason you used it in your hack, talk about it. That's awesome. But we really care about you delivering on what you promise. So if you go through and, it's an HTML website, but it does, X, Y, and Z, that's going to be better than kind of BSing your way through it because that shows to the judges type thing. The next category is creativity. So we're looking for an innovative proof of concept. So even if you're not done, how thought through is the plan? Is it something that if you had more time, would it really fulfill a need that people have? And, if you're trying to go come up with the next Facebook, obviously that's a reason you wouldn't have it done. So if you've got a big vision and not everything's connected, having that proof of concept where you go in the future is definitely counted into the judging criteria. Next up, we have the wow factor. So basically, this is it impressive? Does it do something cool? Whether that be technical, whether that be UI, things like that. Basically, would you be just as excited to go see this project a second time around? Um, and those are more main four. And then the last one is adaptation to challenges. This comes pretty much exclusively from the write-up. And the thing that I'm going to tell people right now is that it depends on how many people we have per category. This one may or may not be weighted very heavily. If we have a ton of people end up submitting and we only have a finite number of judges, this is one that we might not put as much emphasis on just because we won't have time to go through all the write-up stuff before top 10. But I wanted to focus on this for everyone because when we go to top 10 demos, we'll be playing your demo video and then bringing people from the team on to demo and basically answer judges' question for a Q&A for a couple minutes. So don't be afraid to go talk about the challenges you faced, if and how you overcame them, and if you didn't, oh, we didn't figure this one out, but maybe we pivoted this way, or we found a workaround by doing this feature instead type thing. Being able to go talk about those and what you've learned and, oh, we went in a different direction, all of that is really helpful to kind of give a bigger picture of your project because at the end of the day, this is a 36-hour hackathon project. You know, it's not going to be final production ready code that you can ship out the next day, but it's really cool to go through and see what you did to go through and kind of come up with it and how you learned and how you grew and if there's a vision for the future and things like that. That's kind of what that last category is. And yes, top 10 judging is to decide the top three. For all of our category prizes, we've got just the one round of judging. So that's based on your write up and that's based on the video. But for top 10, because everyone's being judged on that one and all the judges score a little bit differently in terms of how many points they decide, what we do is we do one round of judging off of the video and the write up. And then to make sure that it's fair for our top 10, we bring everyone onto the live stream and all five judges basically rejudge them based on the demo video and the Q&A to go decide our top three. Um, and so the Q&A will be at 1:30 Eastern Daylight Time tomorrow, also known as about 3.5 hours after submission if you're in a different time zone. The one thing I will say, live site, again, everything's already adaptive in terms of the time zones, and you need at least one person from your team there if you do make it to top 10. You don't need the whole team. I understand people have internet connection issues, people have different time zones. I mean, it's been a long weekend for everyone, so someone might still be asleep and might sleep through an alarm. So you're not going to be penalized if the whole team's not there, but the more people you have, um, the more people we have, obviously, the better in case someone does ask a question about, person B did this, and they're the one who best can answer the question. And yeah, it's 1:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Um, it's Eastern Time, so most of the places, if you search it, that's fine. But if you're doing a time zone conversion, we are currently in daylight savings time at the moment here, so we're only, I believe, -4 off UTC instead of our regular Eastern Standard -5. So that is. Oh, and actually, one more thing. In terms of selecting prizes, as I'm sure you've seen, we've got a ton. Feel free to go apply to any prizes you think you're eligible for. So, for example, if you have a sensor array that tracks something that, let's say it monitors the movement of your fish and it feeds the fish and it tells you on the app when your fish is swimming and when it's sleeping, feel free to enter, both hardware and an app because your hack does have both type thing. Or if you've got, an education hack that helps you find the cheapest colleges for the most return on investment or things like that, you could do that for both education and finance type thing. So feel free to, apply to different categories. It is possible to win more than one category. You're not just capped at winning one. If there's one that's a standout winner, even if they've won other things, we generally assign them to win that category because they were the best. If it's sometimes close, then we will sometimes spread it out. For example, if there's one really good education hack and, the education hack is about the same as another web app, we might give the other one the web and one the education. But again, you know, feel free to apply to more than one category. You're not going to be limited to just one prize if your app is, or your project is that much of a standout winner for that category. So that is everything that I can think of in terms of judging and submissions. I already sent the video in terms of the how-to. If there's anything you'd like in terms of actually filling stuff out, I can demo that. But is there any other questions that people have? Okay. Well, it doesn't look like there are any more questions. So I'll be on for another minute or two if people do come up with questions. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming. We definitely hope you submit, no matter kind of what state your hack's in, because again, hacks that you may not think are done may be more than done enough for the judging and which category you're in and things like that. And it does look good for employers and jobs in your portfolio. Otherwise, you are free to go. And if you have any questions, ask a mentor, ask an organizer. We'll help get you over the finish line.